Chapter 14 Trial and Error. Dear Princess Celestia, today I learned a very important part of friendship, something I had nearly forgotten since I first came to Ponyville. Trust. It is always important to trust your friends, even when it seems that they are fighting a losing battle. In the end, if they truly care about you, everything will play out the way it was meant to be. If Lara, Fluttershy, and all my other friends hadn't stuck up for me in my time of need, things would have taken a horrible turn for the worst. There are many things I'm still not used to in Ponyville, and it may take me some time to become acquainted with them. But with my friends by my side, I can trust that they will help guide me on this crazy roller coaster ride I found myself in. Sincerely, Hunter Gray. P.S. Thanks for helping me back there, too. I owe you one. Another blast of cold swept across Sweet Apple Acres in the field where I was harvesting wood for the town. I shivered and cast a glance to Big Macintosh, who had agreed to allow me to help. He appeared completely unfazed by the cold weather. I suppose having fur covering your entire body did have its benefits. All I had for protection was tattered clothing. The irony of this portion of my punishment didn't escape me. It was Applejack who proposed that I work on the farm to make up for the food I stole. She called it poetic justice, and most of the ponies agreed it was a suitable punishment. But farm work alone did not satisfy them. Many of the ponies thought I should have a bit more work, and they asked Twilight, Sparkle, and the Mare to come up with a list of tedious tasks for me to perform. Now, every day was a routine. I'd wake up in Lara and Bonbon's house, and I am happy to add that the latter has warmed up to me a bit. Go to Sweet Apple Acres to work in the mornings, and Twilight would come by near noon with a list of other chores. Whenever I had time to kill, Lara and Fluttershy would try to help integrate me into Ponyville society, usually by telling me to try hang out in the middle of town, shopping with them, socializing with the other ponies, or playing some games. But it did little to help the cause. Despite what had transpired 3 days ago when Celestia had deemed me fit to walk among the ponies, the citizens of Ponyville were still tense whenever I walked by. Casual conversations would turn to whispers and darting eyes. Laughter would immediately die down, almost. The citizens were quick to back out of my way, and I was always given a wide berth as I walked down the streets. It didn't help that I always felt awkward around them as well. I don't mean awkward in the sense that I was having another of my antisocial fits. It just felt as if the ponies and I were incompatible. I couldn't help but recall that puzzle game that toddlers used to play. The one with the cube, the cylinder, and the rectangular prism that children would try to stuff through the appropriate hole. It was as if I was the cube, and some all-powerful hand was trying to stuff me through the circular hole. A deep voice disrupted my train of thought. "All right, Hunter, we're moving on to the pumpkin patch." I glanced up to find Big Macintosh already leaving with the cart of vegetables we had gathered. "You'd best be getting a move on." "All right." I jogged next to the red stallion and dumped the vegetables I had collected into the cart. Another gust of cold wind blew by, causing me to shiver and fold my arms into my chest. It's kind of chilly today, isn't it? Hey, yup. Okay, that's one way to kill a conversation, I muttered under my breath. I looked up at the sky to see how far the sun had traveled. It had almost reached the climax of its ascent, but there was still a decent amount of time before noon rolled around. So, I tried again. It's kind of weird being here and working. Big Macintosh cast me a bored, sideways glance, but said nothing. Especially in the daylight, I continued. I'm still used to coming here at night, honestly, but it's just nice to walk around without running for my life for a change. Again, the muscular stallion said nothing. His silence was beginning to make me uneasy. Hey, I'm not pushing my luck talking about that, am I? Big Macintosh halted and stared at me. His halt was so sudden that I almost continued to the next field without him. "Just keep in mind that you've caused a mighty bit of chaos to the citizens of Ponyville over the past month, whether you all knew it or not," he answered. "Every pony has their own reason for not trusting you, and mine is that you've stolen from my family." He trudged forward with the cart, leaving me behind to think over his words. No pony's that quick to forget the past, he added. I jogged back up to his side and mimicked his pace. It's nice that you're doing this to make up for what you did, but it's going to take a lot more to change my opinion about you. You do know I did those things, don't you? I asked. As expected, he didn't answer. If I didn't steal a few apples or corn or carrots, I probably would have starved to death. I was only doing what I needed to survive. But did your reason justify your actions? This time, I was the one without an answer. Did my reason justify my actions? Of course they did. There's no other way for me to obtain food other than to steal. I could have starved. It made perfect sense to me. But despite my own opinion on the subject, I couldn't help myself but to just share. I couldn't bring myself to share it out loud. We arrived at the pumpkin patch where Applejack was already harvesting the pumpkins in her own cart. Howdy there, she called out once we were within earshot. Pretty chilly today, ain't it? Big Macintosh and I answered with a simultaneous, yep. Applejack chuckled. Hey, Macintosh, how do you take your cart over to town? I'll watch over our little friend for the rest of the morning. You sure you can handle him? Big Macintosh asked. He's quite the hoofful. Since when? I asked incredulously. I can look after myself, brother, Applejack smiled. Besides, your cart's full, and I've already started harvesting the pumpkins. The Red Stallion looked hesitant at first, but eventually departed. Applejack and I got to work. Well, I got to work. Applejack stayed with the cart, occasionally pulling it closer so that I wouldn't have to carry the pumpkins as far. So, how many pumpkins do we need anyways? I asked as I carried the 10th one to the cart. I'd say as much as we can get, Applejack answered. I dumped the pumpkin in the cart and dusted my hands off on my jeans. Sheesh, what's the occasion? Is Granny Smith making everyone pumpkin pie? Something like that. We're going to be using these pumpkins here for lots of things, Applejack explained. Like pumpkin pies, jack-o'-lanterns, the ammunition for the pumpkin catapults. I think Pinkie Pie said she wanted some to make pumpkin-flavored icing for her cupcakes. I returned with 2 more pumpkins and deposited them. My fingers were feeling a bit numb, so I tried breathing warm air on them and rubbed them together to return some feeling. Is Halloween coming already? I asked. I shook my head in disbelief. Geez, where does time go? Holla, what now? Applejack gave me a confused look. No, I'm talking about Nightmare Night. You know, that one when the fools dress up in costumes and get candy and stuff? We even have a little festival with games and spooky stories. Applejack, you just described Halloween to the letter, I said. Humans have some weird names for holidays, Applejack commented. How do you get Halloween from Nightmare Night, anyhow? How do you get Nightmare Night from Halloween? The orange mare didn't respond, and the next few minutes of labor continued in silence. When I put the 30-odd pumpkin in the cart, I realized it was almost full. A glance towards the sky revealed it was almost noon. Say, Applejack, when does my little punishment end? I asked. The cart's about full, by the way. Applejack rubbed her chin with her hoof as she pondered on my question. I don't know, she shrugged. Wait a minute, what do you mean you don't know? I demanded. Do you mean to tell me that this could very well be the last day as much as it could be a month from now? There was another pause as I contemplated. Yep, she finally said. If you want any specifics, you should probably ask Twilight. Yeah, ask Twilight, I snorted. That'll be the day. Are you still mad at her for all them experiments and interrogations? No, Applejack, I sarcastically deadpanned. I've completely forgotten about all of the pain and suffering I had to endure every time I was near her. Oh, now don't be like that. Twilight's a nice mare. You just got off on the wrong hoof is all. I'm sure if you two just spent some time together, you all would get along just fine. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? I snapped. Applejack turned her head and gave an apologetic grin. Sorry. I rolled my eyes and glanced at the sky again. The sun had reached its apex, which meant that Twilight should be arriving at any second. I turned my attention to the barn direction, and lo and behold, standing on the hill was the unicorn in question. "Speak of the devil," I muttered. "What was that?" Applejack asked. Nothing. Twilight's here," I said. I started heading towards the purple unicorn to receive the remainder of my chores for the day. I should probably get going. Hey, before you go," Applejack called out. I paused and turned around to find her slipping out of the cart's harness. "Do you think you could bring this here cart into town for me?" It wasn't too long of a trip between here and Ponyville. Sure, it was extra labor, but accepting the job might help me on Applejack's good side. She was one of the few ponies that sincerely felt sorry about what I was put through. "Sure, why not?" I finally said. "Where do I need to take them?" "Sugar Cube Corner. Do you know where that is? The giant gingerbread house? Shouldn't be too hard to miss." "Alrighty then." Applejack trotted off. "Thank you kindly, Hunter," she called out. "Much appreciated." "Any way I can help," I mumbled. I walked around the cart, trying to find the best possible way to move it. I wasn't about to stuff myself through the yoke. That would make me look ridiculous. Maybe I could get behind and push. "Hey there," a voice said from behind me. The sudden break in silence startled me. I twisted around and found Twilight Sparkle standing patiently behind me. She had a smile on her face, obviously pleased with my reaction. "Did I scare you?" "What do you want, Twilight?" I asked as I tried to push the cart from the back. It barely budged forward. "Other than the obvious, of course," I added. "Well, I came and brought the list of things you need to do today, and..." Her voice trailed off as I continued to push the heavy cart forward. "Okay, what are you doing?" My answer was strained as I applied more force to the cart. "Ugh, I'm bringing this cart of pumpkins to Sugar Cube Corner." "Do you need help?" I stopped my futile effort and doubled over, trying to catch my breath. My arms and legs were already sore from the work in the morning, and this labor didn't do much to help them. Nevertheless, I wasn't about to make myself appear needy, especially in front of Twilight. I can assure you, Twilight, that I am perfectly capable of pushing something on wheels." I stood back up and stretched my arms. "Now, if you can just give me that list, we can both go our separate ways." Twilight rolled her eyes in annoyance and conjured up a scroll from her saddlebag. "Here you go, Hunter." The rolled up parchment floated over to me. When it was within arm's reach, I picked it up from the air and opened it. "It's relatively short compared to the others," Twilight commented, "but the last one might take a bit longer." My eyes skimmed through the list. Sure enough, it definitely was shorter. It even has some of the more disturbing tasks on it. Just some menial tasks such as some minor construction work and picking up trash. It was only when I read the last line that I became uneasy. "Help with preparations for Nightmare Night Festival," I read aloud. How do I do that?" "Just ask the mayor about that one," Twilight simply answered. She gave me the pumpkin cart one last look before leaving. "Have fun pushing that cart to Ponyville," she called out. I shook my head, agitated yet again after another meeting with the Lavender Unicorn. Truthfully, that was probably the least painful meeting we've had in about 3 days, considering there was no heated argument of some silly thing that had no real significance. There was still plenty of tension in the air whenever we were near each other. The only thing that prevented a brawl was the fact that we rarely ever spoke to each other unless we had to. "One of these days, Twilight," I muttered as soon as she disappeared over the hill. "I don't know when, how, what, or why it will happen, but one of these days..." The better part of an hour had passed when I had finally made it back into town. The entire trek was, as expected, tedious and uneventful. I had passed many ponies on my path, all of whom stared at me as I pushed the heavy cart. Not one of them offered to help, but I didn't mind. In fact, I would have been surprised if they did. The only breaks I received from my exertion of energy were when I had to push it downhill, but such breaks were few and far between. I managed to accumulate a few odd glances as I pushed the cart through town. The ponies often leaned into those nearest to them and made a hushed comment. I had little doubt as to what their topic of discussion was. One pony bluntly pointed out that I was using the cart wrong. He even insulted me soon after. Those around him gasped and tried to hush him, probably fearing how I might react. It took all my willpower not to retaliate with a snide remark. When I finally reached my destination, I parked the pumpkins off to the side and knocked on the door. "Coming!" a male voice called out. I waited for a few seconds before the door opened up, revealing a tall, slender, yellow stallion with an orange mane and an orange and white striped bow tie and baker's hat. Mr. Cake, if I remember correctly. "Hello, and welcome to Sugar Cube Corner. What can I do for—" His voice trailed off as he took in my presence. He let out a yelp and slammed the door hard. I consciously backed up as an uproar of noise emitted from the other side. After another round of waiting, the door opened again with Mr. Cake on the other side. "Sorry about that," he chuckled. "Just had to put a few things away is all. So, what brings you here?" I gestured to the pumpkins. "Ah, yes, Pinkie Pie has been expecting those. You can just leave him here, Hunter. Pinkie will come by shortly to pick them up." "I can bring some of them inside if you'd like," I offered. Mr. Cake's eyes widened in alarm. No!" he hastily exclaimed as he covered as much of the doorway as possible. With his erratic breathing died down, he recomposed himself. No, I can't trouble you with that," he smiled nervously. "Besides, you've probably got to have a long list of things to do today. I'd hate to keep you from them." The baker went out of his way to push me a few feet further from the door. I got the message and continued walking. "Have a nice day, Hunter," he called out. With one onerous test down and my stomach craving for food, I decided now would be as good of a time as ever to have my lunch break. Lara and I had already discussed where we should eat, a small restaurant with an outside eating area. We walked past it this morning so that she could show me it, and if memory serves correct, it shouldn't be too far from here. After a few minutes of wandering through the maze of buildings, I finally found the rendezvous point. Lara was waiting patiently at a table, having a conversation with Fluttershy. The unicorn caught sight of me and waved me over, and I was more than happy to join the two. It would be a nice stress reliever after the morning I've had. "Hey, Hunter," Lara greeted as I sat down. "How's our favorite human going?" I fidgeted around to make myself comfortable in the miniaturized chair. "Yeah, decent," I answered. "Did you make any new friends?" Fluttershy asked hopefully. "No, but I think Mr. Cake is lightening up around me," I answered. "A few moments ago, when I dropped off some pumpkins, he apologized after slamming the door in my face." The smile on my companion's faces faltered slightly. "Oh yeah, and when he kicked me out of Sugar Cube Corner before I even stepped foot inside, he gently shoved me. I think he and I are getting off to a good start." "Oh," Fluttershy said through a forced smile. "That's nice." I threw in a weak smile in response. Lara slammed a hoof on the table, immediately catching mine and Fluttershy's attention. "This isn't cutting it," she announced. "It's been 3 days since you were practically pardoned by the princess, and yet every pony is either still scared of you or nervous whenever you're around." "Well, in their defense, it has only been 3 days," I reminded. Big Macintosh's words bumped back into mind. No pony is that quick to forget the past. "But it's still not fair," Lara said. "Every pony who has ever been with you for an extended period of time wound up liking you in the end." Her brow furrowed in concentration. "What we need to do is find a way for every pony to spend more time with you." My stomach let out a very audible growl, interrupting the thinking mare. "We can also use some food," Fluttershy added. "Where is the waitress? She said she was coming with the menus a little bit ago." The three of us looked around curiously for the missing waitress. I noted how many unoccupied tables surrounded us compared to those further away. When I sat down, I could have sworn that there were more ponies around us. In fact, that one, a couple of ponies sitting 5 tables away, looked exactly like the two that were at the table next to us a few moments ago. "There she is," Lara pointed. I followed her hoof to the restaurant front door and saw a stallion pushing a unicorn mare with 3 menus closer to us. The look on the mare's face suggested that she was frightened beyond belief. "Waitress!" Lara called out. The sun gave the unicorn one last shove before she reluctantly pulled herself back together and trotted over to us. Our 3 menus were encased in a magical aura and followed close behind her. "Sorry about the wait," she apologized. Sweat poured off her face as she approached us. "Here are your menus. What would you like to drink?" Fluttershy, Lara, and I searched through the menus and made our requests. The waitress wrote down our orders down on a notepad and trotted back to the restaurant entrance. "Where were we?" Lara asked. "Oh, yeah! We need to think about some way to make the more ponies spend time with you." She leaned in close and started making gestures with her hooves. "Now, I recommend we build a large box and stuff a pony inside Hunter for about 30 minutes at a time. Once I get the chance to know you, and then boom! Instant friendship." The unicorn leaned back proudly in her chair, ready to hear praises out for her excellent idea. Lyra," Fluttershy piped up, "I don't think that will work." "Yeah, I have to agree with Fluttershy," I added. "Forcing ponies into doing something they don't want to do won't get us where I want. And, truthfully, I don't think I would want to spend 30 minutes locked up in a box with myself." "Well, if you guys don't think that'll work, then what do you suppose we do?" Lara demanded. The waitress returned with our drinks, causing an interruption in our conversation. I realized I had yet to look over the menu and skimmed over it for my order. The restaurant's choices were slightly displeasing. The vast majority of their foods were either grass or hay products or dessert. There weren't any meat-based foods to satisfy my carnivorous side, which didn't help expand my options. In the end, I panicked and ordered a simple salad. The waitress wrote down our orders, took up our menus, and trotted back to the restaurant. "Maybe you can play with some of the foals?" Fluttershy suggested. I raised an eyebrow. "And risk everybody thinking I'm a pedophile? Thanks, but I'll pass." Fluttershy's face fell, disappointed that her idea didn't help either. "Well, come on, Hunter!" Lara exclaimed. "Give us something to work with here." I held my hands up in defense. "There has to be something we can do," Lara continued. "Maybe if we had a social gathering of some sort, like a parade or a competition or a party or—" A pink blur suddenly shot out from under the table and next to me. "Did somebody say party?" Pinkie Pie's abrupt entrance startled me. Her unkempt pink mane bounced as she looked between me, Fluttershy, and Lara expectantly. The only thing brighter than her sparkling eyes was her wide smile. Her forelegs were tapping on the table excitedly as she stood on her hind legs. I stared at the pink pony as if she sprouted a 5th limb. "Pinkie Pie, were you under the table this entire time?" I asked. Pinkie Pie laughed and gave me a soft noogie. "No, silly filly. I just heard the magic word and decided to drop by for a visit. So, what's the party for?" Lara sighed. "Nothing. We were just brainstorming about ways to make every pony like Hunter. There might not even be a party." "No party?" Pinkie gasped. She slammed her hoof on the table. "Blasphemy! Nothing says friendship and happiness like a good party, and no pony can throw a party as good as me." The sudden determination in her eyes was shocking, almost frightening. Pinkie," Fluttershy spoke up, "there's no need to get all worked up over this. We can come with something ourselves, really." "It's too late for that now," Pinkie Pie announced. "I'm going to throw you a welcoming party so great that every pony in town is going to love you. To the Pinkie Cave!" She disappeared under the table again. I sat there, dumbstruck, staring at the empty space that was once occupied by the hyperactive pink mare. When she didn't reappear, I checked under the table, thinking I could find her laying down and giggling at my confusion. But the space was completely empty. I slowly rose back up in my seat. What just happened?" I asked, scratching the back of my head. "It's probably best that you don't think too much about it," Fluttershy just suggested. "Twilight tried that once. It didn't turn out very well." I shook my head. I can only imagine the chaos that would spawn from a logical and scientific unicorn like Twilight and an illogical and physics-defying pony like Pinkie Pie. I'll take your word for it. Our food arrived shortly after the Pinkie Pie incident. My 2 friends eagerly dug into their meals. I, on the other hand, had a little obstacle to clear before eating mine. Excuse me," I politely called out to the waitress as she was about to leave. Her entire body went rigid as she slowly turned around. She forced a smile on her face to mask, acting as she wasn't the least bit intimidated by me. But the look in her eyes betrayed her true thoughts. Yes, sir, she stammered, sweat dripping off her brow. May I have a fork? I asked. The waitress's eyes widened in fear, but she kept the smile facade. A fork? She weakly chuckled. Why would you need such a sharp utensil? To eat my salad, I deadpanned. The waitress blushed. Oh, right. Silly me, forgetting a fork. I'll be right back. I watched as she trotted back into the restaurant and sighed. They don't even trust me with a fork. Maybe she just forgot about it? I offered. It's not uncommon for waiters and waitresses to forget something like forks and spoons. Yeah, not uncommon, I echoed. I wish it was as simple as that. The mood at the table darkened dramatically. Fluttershy and Lara set aside their lunch as if they had suddenly lost their appetite, and when the waiter returned with my fork, I barely ate. Minutes ticked by slowly. The two ponies made plenty of attempts to break the silence. Most of their conversations only lasted for a few lines. I tried to join in on some of the topics, but they were talking about too many pony-related things for me to understand clearly. I still had a limited knowledge over some of the things that were common to them, such as cutie marks, magic, and folklore. And every time I tried bringing up topics that I knew, which was most human-based, they stared at me as if I was a total stranger. After a complex discussion about the equestrian water cycle, I decided it was time for me to get to work. Well, I better get going, I announced. I have a lot of things to do and only so long to do it. See you girls later. See you later, Hunter, Lara called back. Good luck with your chores. She and Fluttershy waved farewell as I walked away. Thanks, I called out. In a more hushed tone, I added, I'm going to need it. I trudged through the Ponyville streets, lugging a green, smelly garbage bag over my shoulder. This was the 5th bag I had managed to fill up since I started cleaning up 2 long hours ago. Thankfully, this was the last one. After I threw this bag away, I would be free to move on to my next labor, which happened to be the preparation for the Halloween festival, aka the Nightmare Night Festival. I shifted the bag on my shoulder, trying to put it in a more comfortable position. I swear, these ponies are just as bad as humans when it comes to this, I grumbled. Truth be told, it was an exaggeration, but I was a bit grumpy to be thinking rationally. My previous chores weren't exactly the most productive, for lack of better words, as I would have liked them to be. Not in the sense that I didn't do anything constructive during my trials, but that I didn't make any notable social progress. During my labor in construction, I was given the menial tasks such as carrying wood supplies for the vast majority of my time. It took some time before any of the workers to trust me with a hammer and nails, even longer to allow me to use a saw to cut the wood planks. When I began cleaning the town, most of the ponies cleaned up the area around them. I am pretty sure it wasn't an act of kindness, though. They're probably just making sure I didn't have a reason to get closer to them.
And yet, we still find you trying to make peace with them.
Oh, well, I smiled. I reached the local dumpster and tossed the garbage inside. I was wondering when I would hear your voice again. I haven't heard you since that little skirmish with Twilight and Lara's place. What have you been up to?
Trying to restrain ourselves from creating a massacre. And believe us, it is very hard at times.
Really? That sounds extremely uncharacteristic of you, I commented. Actually, I'm surprised you haven't spoken up earlier. I was starting to feel lonely with no one to listen to my nonsense ramblings.
Oh, what's the matter? Did the ponies not want to listen to you?
The voice asked in mock sympathy. Oh, no. They listen sometimes, I answered. It's just that things are a bit different here. You'll never believe this, but the water cycle here...
We are fully aware of the conversations you've had with the residents. We never left your head. We were just biding our time.
I shrugged and made my way back to Ponyville. It wasn't going to be too long of a walk. I just had to walk through the park. Most of the leaves were orange and brown. I suppose that the ponies didn't do the running of the leaves in the park. Honestly, I sort of enjoyed the extra color. As I traveled on the dirt trail, I passed plenty of ponies. It was always interesting to see what they were doing before they noticed me. Many of them were simply sitting on benches in the odd way the ponies did, legs tucked underneath their horizontal bodies. I couldn't perceive how I thought it was comfortable, but I suppose that the difference in anatomy had a major role in it. Those sitting on the benches were either having a conversation with another pony, or just enjoying the scenery.
How can you stand being with these creatures?
The voice asked. I just passed another pair of ponies who gave me a suspicious stare as I walked by.
Do you not feel unnerved by their silent stares?
I waited until there weren't any eyewitnesses around to answer. Of course I do, I whispered. But they still don't trust me. They're afraid I might lash out at them.
Which means they are ready to strike back,
the voice argued.
It is not safe for you to trust them so blindly, especially after how eager they were to see you suffer.
That was before Celestia pardoned me, I retaliated. Some of the ponies even feel guilty about what they did.
Yes, some of them. Not all of them. It would be wise to remember that.
The voice never spoke again for the rest of the journey to Ponyville. It left me to dwell on the conversation we had, and honestly, I didn't like where my mind was wandering. There were so few ponies that I could rely on compared to those that still didn't trust me. If a crisis were to arise, and I were to be caught in the middle of it, I wasn't sure just how the ponies would try to help me. I wasn't even sure if I wholly trusted them. When I entered the town, I looked over to my checklist to be certain I didn't miss anything. The only item remaining was the preparation for the Nightmare Night Festival. Who did Twilight say I should talk to for that one? Oh yes, the mayor. She shouldn't be too hard to find. In fact, the preparations were probably starting right now. All I had to do was look for ponies setting up Halloween decorations, and I would be sure to find her. It didn't take long until I stumbled upon the group of working ponies. They were everywhere, setting up stands and circus tents, making jack-o'-lanterns, decorating their streets and town hall with hoof-made decor. In the middle of it all stood the mayor, checking the ponies' projects and giving out orders to the workers as they came along. I strode over to the mayor to receive my share of the labor. Hunter Gray, reporting for duty, ma'am. I saluted when I reached her. She turned around at the sound of my voice. "Oh, there you are, Hunter," she said. The Tin Mare was lax in my presence, a nice break from the usual response from ponies when I was around them. "Twilight said you would be coming to help." The mayor glanced around at the workers. "Well, it looks as if you came at a lucky time. We're just about done for the day." "Really?" I smiled. "Cool. I guess I'll be heading home then." "Now hold on just a minute." I paused in mid-stride. "I said we were about done for the day," the mayor reiterated. "Don't think you are off the hook just yet. I want to talk to you about the Nightmare Night Festival." What about it?" I asked. "I'm not exactly familiar with the holiday, so if you're asking me for advice, you have the wrong guy." "Oh, no. The mayor shook her head. "I want you to work in the festival." A moment of silence passed before I broke it with laughter. "You can't be serious, can you?" I asked. "Oh, absolutely." "All right, let me get this straight," I said, still laughing in disbelief. "You want me," I directed a finger to myself for extra confirmation, "to take part of a festival that I haven't heard of until recently, one that is meant to be scary at that. What on earth could possibly compel you to believe that's a good idea?" The mayor was a bit taken aback by my question. She composed herself and answered it in a haughty attitude. "Well, I thought it would be nice to have you participate in a traditional part of Ponyville's history. You working at the Nightmare Night Festival would make you more natural in every pony's eyes. In fact, I do believe I've heard that you're having some social complications." She glanced up to me like a disapproving teacher. "Is that true, Mr. Gray?" I shuffled uncomfortably. Well, it's possible that it might be true, I admitted. So would you like to take my offer? My mind decided to do a quick run-through of all the possible scenarios of what could happen if I said yes. All of the rational ones ended positively, and I had no real reason to say no. She did have the authority to force me to participate, too. Sure, I shrugged. Why not? The mayor nodded. That is nice to hear. Meet me tomorrow to discuss how you can participate in the festival. It shouldn't be too hard. You can fit in quite a few rules that I can think of off the top of my head. The mayor looked around the now empty area. Well, that appears to be all. You're free to go, Hunter. Until next time. See you later, I waved back. I wandered around Ponyville, thinking what to do next. Nothing struck me as interesting. In fact, there was little to do in town. I didn't have any money, or bits, as the currency was called, to buy anything. Even if I did, I didn't know what I would spend it on. There was no use going back to the park unless I wanted to sit in the frigid weather. I didn't exactly have any friends to talk to or hang out with either. No, I take that back. I did have some friends. Lara, Fluttershy, the Kingdom Crusaders, Zakor, and a few others. I could hang out with them. Well, maybe. I didn't know where Fluttershy lived, but I heard something about it being out of town. So Zakor was probably at her house in the Everfree Forest, a place that I didn't want to go unless absolutely necessary. Applebloom, Sweetiebelle, and Scootaloo were who knows where, doing who knows what. Lara was the only rational choice at the moment, so I decided to try to find her. My best bet was to start at her house. As my trek to her house progressed, I noticed something very peculiar. The population of Ponyville seemed to be dwindling. One of its busy streets were now completely desolate. I stopped and turned around to check the marketplace I had recently exited and found it completely deserted. My paranoia rose, and I quickened my pace to Lara and Bonbon's house. Hello? I called out. Is anybody out there? No response. Not a single sound was made. Everything was still. There wasn't even a breeze. The emptiness was beginning to gnaw away at me, and I soon found myself panicking. Hello? I called again, slightly louder than before. Something moved in the corner of my eye. I barely had enough time to see a grayish mint green and white tail disappear behind a building. Lyra? I thought out loud as I pursued it. As I rounded the corner, I found the familiar unicorn waiting patiently for me in the middle of a faraway intersection. Come on, Hunter! She cried out. You're not going to catch me if you walk that slowly. With that, she took off. Lyra, I groaned. We don't have time for this. I'm tired and it's freezing outside. Can we just go home? She didn't respond and continued to run. I picked up the pace to a jog and followed. She was still a good distance ahead of me, and she managed to keep that distance despite my efforts. Lyra, I've got a funny feeling, I complained as I eyed the vacant town. The emptiness was making me feel eerie. Regardless of my pleas, Lyra continued to run and giggled like a child. My anxiety rose every time she rounded a corner and disappeared from sight, and it only lowered slightly when I found her again. Finally, the madness came to an end. I followed Lyra to the center of town. As I broke through the maze of houses, I could see her opening the town hall's doors. She gave me a happy wave and jumped inside, closing the door behind her. I jogged up to the massive building and found myself exhausted from that little exercise. It's time to see what the heck is going on, I panted as I reached for the doorknob. The door swung open, and I was met with a wall of darkness. I cautiously entered, jumping when the door slammed closed behind me. Lyra? I nervously called. Suddenly, the lights turned on. My eyes were assaulted by a vast array of colors as ponies appeared out of nowhere. On the floor, in the balconies, on the stage, in the back, in the air, in some Pegasus case. In the middle of it all stood two mares, Lyra and Pinkie Pie, the latter standing behind her famous party cannon. Unanimously, all of the ponies in the building cried out one word.